Hello, and thanks for checking out Chemistry Connections on the Hopewell Valley Student Podcasting Network, a proud partner of hvspn.com, where students come together to publish content to share with the world. The opinions represented within this episode are those of the content creators only. Please enjoy the show.
This is episode number 12 of Chemistry Connections. Our names are Veer, Davda,
and Ramit, Dasika.
And we will be talking about seizures. Seizures are really scary, and for a lot of people, it can strike at any time. If you have a seizure disorder, by just playing a video game or watching TV, it can cause a seizure to strike at any moment. What we try to discover in this episode is what the chemistry behind the seizure is and the chemical processes behind the seizure.
So, what exactly is a seizure?
So a seizure is a symptom in which there's a disturbance in the brain. It leads to changes in mood, behavior, and a level of consciousness in that day. During a seizure, there's a sudden, intense burst of electricity that disrupts how the brain usually works. This activity can happen on one small part of the brain and last for just a couple of seconds, or can spread right across the brain and keep going for many minutes.
That's pretty shocking, pun intended.
Now let's move on to where that sudden burst of electricity comes from, is a question we are trying to figure out, and what exactly causes that burst of electricity is what we aim to discover. So what a couple of those causes could be is chemical weapons such as sarin and VX, and pesticides such as parathion and carbaryl that causes hyperstimulation of chlorogenic receptors and an increase in excitatory neurotransmission.
Right, but that doesn't quite make sense, as not everyone is exposed to these chemical weapons every day. Yet there are countless number of people that fall victim to this symptom. There must be another answer that is more generalized to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I've always been confused why the rates of seizures have been going up. Is there a specific reason?
So, even though epilepsy can be very fatal, the symptoms do not hurt at all. So the symptoms are basically unrecognizable, unless there are regular doctor checkups, which is sad because it is very deadly. I think that if we look into more of the chemistry behind seizures, we may find a more definitive answer.
Alright, so then let's just look at the chemistry.
Okay, so then let's start by finding the idea of an ionic substance or ionic compounds that form from ions that are attached together with ionic bonding, which is based on the attraction between the positively charged cation and the negatively charged anion. So when ionic substances dissolve in water, it becomes a solution, and the ionic bonding is broken, and the compound dissociates to produce this positive and negative ion, or cation and anion, and these ions that are produced are called electrolytes. And they're called electrolytes because of their according charge, and they will be negatively charged ion or a positively charged ion. And they can be ionic or covalent bonds, compounds. And if it is an ionic compound, the compound of a nonmetal and a metal dissociate to yield its appropriate ions, which are electrolytes. And if it's a covalent compound, the covalent bonding between both nonmetals are broken, and the negatively charged ions are produced, which are also electrolytes. And I'm talking all about this because in seizures, there's an imbalance in the amount of electrolytes because it's caused by sodium disorders, hypocalcemia, and hypomagnesemia. And the immediate correction of this electrolyte imbalance is crucial in permanent brain damage, and this can create drastic consequences due to seizures. And medical conditions such as dehydration can impact this electrolyte imbalance for the worse.
So what about our previous question on where the burst comes from? We can't just forget about that since it's pretty important.
Okay. So to answer your question about where the sudden burst of electricity comes from and what exactly causes the burst of electricity, we must go back to the basics of how the brain works. In the brain, it continuously generates electrical bursts that are required to create thoughts and memories. And these electrical pulses are created and transmitted by neurons, which are a channel of cells that are in the brain. And their main job is to send these messages throughout the entire body. And if this process is compromised, like when the patient has medical conditions like dehydration and sodium disorders, hypocalcemia, or hypomagnesemia. Due to this imbalance of electrolytes, the neurons would just rapidly fire out too many of these electrical pulses, and the brain's proper electrical balance is disrupted.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, I know that seizures in their early stages aren't very fatal and can be treated, but due to their lack of recognizing seizures, it worsens the case. But I've been a little curious. What exactly worsens this state?
Well, before I go on to that, I just wanted to say that there are many chemicals that are known to worsen seizures. But one cause being a vitamin deficiency is known to worsen seizures. One main vitamin deficiency being vitamin B6 deficiency, also known as pyridoxine deficiency. This deficiency occurs mainly in newborns and infants and causes seizures that are hard to control. Pyridoxine is known to be a very rare case that causes seizures, but it can happen. Just know that this is not the only cause of seizures and that there are also many other causes, like alcohol, high stress, rapidly flashing lights, which could be caused by video games or television, and other stuff. But let's just talk about pyridoxine and its chemical structure.
Wait. Before you do that, why does it only appear in newborns and infants?
Well, a vitamin B6 deficiency can only happen in infants, and the chemical imbalance can only happen when the baby is forming.
That makes sense.
Okay, so let's just move on to the chemical structure of pyridoxine. So pyridoxine, which can be used to cause seizures in children at a young age and can even cause seizure disorders, it can be classified as C8, H11, and O3. It has a carbon chain with 8 carbons, and since it has a pretty long surface area due to the long carbon chain with 8 carbons, it is more polarizable and has stronger LDF forces. It has some OH bonds attached to the carbons, and it has CH3 bonds attached to the other carbons, making this a very unique molecule.
Okay, so from our fans, we've had some questions. So I'm asking you, Veer, what mainly interested you in this topic?
So what mainly interested me into this topic was my interest in seizures and how exactly they worked. So my mom also works at a hospital in Capitol Health, and they also deal with a lot of seizures, and she talks about it a lot when she gets home, which is what interested me in pursuing this topic because I wanted to know the chemistry behind seizures and how exactly they were caused.
So for me, I was interested in this topic because it is still unknown, as the symptoms or experience are odd and very fatal, unfortunately. And it has a lot to deal with the negative effects on the brain. And my cousin is a neurosurgeon, so he talks about that a lot, like how your mom talks about seizures to you. So I guess we have like a sort of connection there.
Okay, so another one of our fans asked, why is this important to us? So I'll just ask you, Ramit, so why is this important to you?
So I feel like this is important to us because I feel that discussing and analyzing such a topic like seizures is important because it can be it is very fatal. And as we analyze the causes more and more, we can prevent more seizure cases from happening, and we can get closer to finding a solution. And same thing to you. Why do you think discussing and analyzing the seizures is very important to us?
So I think this is like an extremely important topic because seizures have the ability to literally kill someone. And knowing what exactly happens with the seizure and how exactly they work is a key in order to prevent seizures. So I also work as a volunteer like EMT, so basically like an EMS, where I basically just observe the other EMTs. So it's extremely helpful to know what exactly happens with the seizure chemically and knowing how to prevent it. So just in case if I'm in like a sort of scenario where someone is having a seizure and the other EMTs are busy, I can know what is exactly happening to them and go on to resolve the issue of the seizure to continue happening.
Yeah, that's great. Nice. Okay. This has been the end of episode number 12 of Chemistry Connections. Our names are Ramit, Dasika, and Veer, Davda, and goodbye. Thank you for listening.